Last night, the president gives a State of the Union address. As you recall from yesterday's show, I was looking forward to the State of the Union address the way that I normally look forward to a root canal. It's just not my thing. I don't like the State of the Union address. I think it's a monarchic, stupid institution. I think it's full of silly theatrics. Last night's was uniquely entertaining for a variety of reasons. The number one reason it was uniquely entertaining is because every State of the Union address, we get the game of who stands up, who sits down, who claps, who cheers, how do people respond? And the Democrats did, I thought, a pretty horrendous job of responding to President Trump's speech. It seems that they had a basic rule, which is that they were not going to clap for anything. And then Nancy Pelosi, in all of her wisdom, might lead them once in a while in clapping. But President Trump successfully made them look silly in what they chose to clap for and what they did not choose to clap for. Meanwhile, he gave what was one of the best speeches of his career. Now, it was delivered with typical Trump sort of half interest because he was reading from a teleprompter. All of his best moments came when he was off teleprompter, when he was sort of riffing with the room or something would happen and then he'd drop a funny line. And what was weird about the entire event is that we live in an extraordinarily politically divided time, but it was kind of a feel-good speech. You came away from the speech thinking, okay, well, that was kind of nice, right? Like everybody seemed to get along and maybe the country isn't in that much trouble, which is what Trump was going for. So let's jump right into President Trump's State of the Union address. The theme of his address was choosing greatness. That was the overarching theme. And his basic idea was that America not only should be great again, but also America has been great in the past. And this is a narrative that Trump is on solid ground in talking about, because there really are two visions of what America is and has been. There's the Republican vision, the conservative vision, which says America was founded on eternal truths and guiding principles. We haven't always lived up to those, but we have always moved toward the better fulfillment of those principles. And we have freed millions of people from slavery and depredation. We have freed billions of people from poverty. In other words, America is a pretty freaking phenomenal place. America's a phenomenal place. And our shortcomings, our attempt to correct those shortcomings is part of that story, right? The fact that we have not always lived up to our best principles and that we have tried to correct ourselves, that's because we are so incredible. Then there's the Democrat vision of the United States, founded in racism, sexism, bigotry, patriarchalism, and we have gradually moved away from that founding toward a better future. But we're not there yet, and America's still kind of a hellhole, and therefore we need to continue fighting to overcome our past. That's sort of the Democratic vision. One is the vision of a people that was founded on good ideas, and we're constantly trying to better ourselves to live up to those ideas. And one is the sort of America was founded in sin, rooted in sin, can never escape that sin. Trump laid out that contrast pretty nicely last night. More than anything, Democrats laid out that contrast when they refused to clap for basically obvious ideas about America. So here's President Trump last night talking about choosing greatness.
We must choose between greatness or gridlock, results or resistance, vision or vengeance, incredible progress or pointless destruction. Tonight, I ask you to choose greatness.
Okay, now it's important to note that this speech was much better written than a lot of his other speeches. So it's pretty obvious Stephen Miller did not write the speech. Stephen Miller's speeches are they're replete with a dark vision of America, a vision of America where it's carnage and chaos. This speech was all about America being pretty awesome, which, as the incumbent president, President Trump needs to make the case for. You can see in the background, if you were watching this, that Nancy Pelosi is ruffling through sheets of paper, which, by the way, is kind of rude. I mean, just if a Republican had done that while President Obama was president, there'd be endless talk about how condescending it was. Nancy Pelosi, however, was deeply condescending last night, and the media cheered it. The media coverage of the State of the Union address, which we will get to in a little while here, was as stupid and nonsensical and partisan and biased as any coverage I've ever seen of the president, which is to say, it was another day in American media. President Trump then started talking about how unemployment rates have dipped to record lows. And again, Democrats refuse to cheer for record low unemployment rates. You would figure that really that's bad optics. And what they'd really want to say is, yes, unemployment rates have dipped to record lows as part of the continuing success of the Obama economy, right? Just all you have to do, just politically, is say the reason that the economy has continued to boom is because it was already doing well under Obama, and it has continued to do well under President Trump. Not the end of the world, but Democrats couldn't even bring themselves to cheer for low black unemployment rates.
Unemployment has reached the lowest rate in over half a century. African American, Hispanic American, and Asian American unemployment have all reached their lowest levels ever recorded. Unemployment for Americans with disabilities has also reached an all-time low.
Okay, Nancy Pelosi is sitting there not cheering, and there are the Democrats sitting there not standing up, not cheering. So is it a bad thing that people with disabilities are working? Weird. Okay, so the Democrats were refusing to cheer for low unemployment rates. They also definitely refused to cheer for putting sex traffickers out of business, which is a weird look. So President Trump says, now it's time for America to end sex trafficking. It's time for America to end illegal immigration that involves human trafficking. And the Democrats are sitting there like, no, we like human trafficking. Now, obviously, they don't like human trafficking, but they don't want to give President Trump any sort of win here, even if what he's speaking about is a basic principle of being a human. So watch this.
Now is the time for Congress to show the world that America is committed to ending illegal immigration and putting the ruthless coyotes, cartels, drug dealers, and human traffickers out of business.
And then there's Kamala Harris shaking her head. Oh, that's terrible, putting sex traffickers out of business. Wow. She's a tough prosecutor, you know. She's a tough prosecutor who really cares about crime rates. She's so tough that she shakes her head when we talk about putting sex traffickers out of business, Kamala Harris. What a delight she is. Okay, so the Democrats definitely showing how, Trump should just run endless commercials in 2020 of him saying eminently obvious things and Democrats shaking their heads or refusing to clap. That's a pretty good commercial for him against Kamala Harris. We want to put sex traffickers out of business. And Kamala Harris like, no, we don't. No, let's not do that. Shaking my head ruefully. Just terrible. And then President Trump got to his illegal immigration pitch, in which he said, correctly, that tolerance for illegal immigration is cruel because what you actually want is lots of legal immigrants, and illegal immigration comes with severe human cost. Now, this was pretty amazing. Once again, Democrats refuse to acknowledge that he is correct, that people are damaged in transit when they are brought in by coyotes. So here is President Trump speaking about it.
Tolerance for illegal immigration is not compassionate. It is actually very cruel. 1 in 3 women is sexually assaulted on the long journey north. Smugglers use migrant children as human pawns to exploit our laws and gain access to our country.
Now, one of my favorite media fact checks occurred about this line of the speech. So President Trump said 1 in 3 women is sexually assaulted on the long journey north. Statistics suggest that 31% of women are sexually assaulted on the long journey north, which is about 1 in 3, right? I mean, it's pretty close to 1 in 3. So the fact checker said partly true. Partly true. So in other words, 33% is 1 in 3. It was 31%. He said 1 in 3, and they rated it partly true because the fact checkers are so full of it. The fact checkers are just terrible. I mean, the fact checks of the State of the Union address are so absurd. A woman at the New York Times, we'll see later that President Trump suggests that a Jew who was freed from Dachau, a death camp during the Holocaust, saw American soldiers coming from the sky and thought they came from heaven. And a fact checker from the New York Times said, Jews don't believe in heaven. It's like, well, you had one job, guys. We sort of do. And President Trump continued. He talked about walls working. He spent an awful lot of time in the speech talking about illegal immigration. And then his conclusion was walls work, which obviously is his main campaign pitch, because in about a week and a half here, we're going to go into possible second government shutdown or him declaring a national emergency. So here's him making that case.
Simply put, walls work and walls save lives. So let's work together, compromise, and reach a deal that will truly make America safe.
Okay, and the Democrats won't cheer for that. So we have to recap. Democrats will not cheer for making America safe through compromise. Democrats will not cheer for low unemployment for blacks, Hispanics, Asian Americans, and Americans with disabilities. Americans, they will not cheer for ending sex trafficking. You ask yourself, what will Democrats cheer for? What do they like? And it turns out that what Democrats will cheer for is themselves. They love themselves. Just like Jim Acosta loves Jim Acosta, Democrats love themselves some Democrats. It was an appalling display. This was truly appalling. So President Trump talks about high employment among women. And I guess we're not allowed to cheer for black employment or Hispanic employment or Asian employment or disabled people employment. We are able to cheer only for people with vaginas employment. Although maybe that's overstated because some men are women, as we've learned. So people who identify as women employment, that we are allowed to cheer for because women are so put upon in American society. Women have it so rough in American society. We say as we look at the Speaker of the House, who is a woman sitting behind the President of the United States during the State of the Union address. I'm going to play you the self-serving, gross, self-congratulatory nonsense that the Democrats participated in last night. It made them look particularly bad, and it exposed their vision of America that is false and truly morally off-putting. I mean, I was really off-put by this, and I think a lot of people were. I'll show you the key moment of the entire night. President Trump has been unable to unify the Democrats and the Republicans about anything. President Trump has been unable to get Democrats to clap for anything up to and including more black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, and people with disabilities working. They will not cheer for anything. But then he stumbles on the one thing Democrats will cheer for, Democrat women will cheer for, these fighters for the underclass. What will they cheer for? Themselves. So here was this self-congratulatory girl power bachelorette party nonsense that happened at the State of the Union address last night.
No one has benefited more from a thriving economy than women, who have filled 58% of the newly created jobs last year. All Americans can be proud that we have more women in the workforce than ever before. And exactly 1 century after Congress passed the constitutional amendment giving women the right to vote, we also have more women serving in Congress than at any time before.
And there they are cheering themselves. Yay, we love us. We're the best. AOC turns around and she actually gives an air high five to no one. Really, that happens. They're cheering. They're dancing. They're so happy about it. They love them. My goodness, the obstacles they've overcome. My goodness, what a place America is because these women were elected. Okay, this is off-putting garbage. The reason it's off-putting garbage is because if we are going to talk about the privileges that people have been given in the United States, it is a privilege to be born a woman in the United States today. America is the freest country in world history, the most upwardly mobile country for women in world history. This notion that women are uniquely put upon in American society is sheer statistical nonsense. It is just not true. And not only is it not true, the absurdity of these women declaring themselves heroes. Look at what we've achieved. Look at what we've done. Because look how much we've had to What has AOC had to overcome? Like a thing. I'm not asking like many things. I'm asking like a thing. She's a 29-year-old bartender with no credentials and no capacity to understand basic economics. She sits in Congress and is extraordinarily famous. What's the obstacle she had to overcome? Why are we cheering this as though this is something unique in American life? As though she is she's breaking a glass ceiling. It's just not true. It's just not true. And it does show the vision that Democrats have for the country. Okay, I want to talk about this in just a second. Democrats see America as a very different place than Republicans see America. So as I say, Republicans see America as a place with eternal truths. Truths like we are all created equal in the eyes of God. Like we all have equal rights. And we have imperfectly applied that rule, but we have moved toward the application of that rule. Women were given the vote more than a century ago. Okay, women have been in politics for a very long time. Women constitute the majority of voters. They constitute the majority of college graduates. They constitute the vast majority of people who gain new jobs in the current economic upsurge. Women have had more wage mobility in the last 30 years than men have in the United States. Women are not victims. And this notion that Democrats are pushing that women have overcome now because lots of women were elected to Congress. Oh, look at us. We are just so awesome. It's so funny. AOC will say that she has cisgender privilege. Because she's a cisgender woman, she has privilege. We all have to acknowledge our privilege. White privilege and male privilege. The privilege of the patriarchy. But nobody in the Democratic Party will acknowledge the greatest privilege of all, which is that they stand on the shoulders of people who actually made sacrifices, people who actually had to overcome, people who actually were part of the American story, making America better. Sitting around and championing yourselves as overcoming some sort of victimhood when you've experienced no victimhood is a mark of ingratitude and nastiness. There are people in that room who had to live through the civil rights movement and actually did heroic work. I'm talking about people with whom I disagree harshly on politics. People like John Lewis, who actually had to live through the civil rights movement and were deeply influential in helping make the country a better place. Those people, if you say John Lewis sits in American Congress, that's something to cheer about. AOC sits in American Congress. Oh, let's cheer because women are in Congress now. I'm sorry. There was nothing that was overcome here. Nothing. There was no barrier to entry for women in Congress. There's nothing uniquely amazing about what just happened in the last election. I know we're supposed to pretend that women broke through a glass ceiling. There was no glass ceiling in American politics. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in the last election cycle. She was Secretary of State. Condoleezza Rice was Secretary of State. Sarah Palin ran for Vice President. Nancy Pelosi, this is not her first round as Speaker of the House. She was Speaker of the House 12 years ago. Can we stop pretending now that women are massively victimized in American society by the patriarchal hierarchy?